Hey, Greg, Joe Chats on Tap Sportsnet. Thanks so much for the time. Just having talked to Sergio, we talked going back to the preseason. LAFC was one of those games where you gave him a very long run out, gave him a start. He was talking about how that gave him a lot of confidence. What have you seen from him all year as you've continually challenged him to be a better player in his first full MLS season?
Just growth. The amount of progress he's made, I think, is potentially more than any other player on the roster. If you think about where he was last year and where he is this year, he's played almost every game he was available for, and he's made a great contribution to the team. But a lot of it has to do with him and the way he accepts challenges and the way he's continued to improve and grow and show his worth to the team.
Alex Calabrese, MLSsoccer.com. Coach, we're more than halfway through the summer transfer window. Deadline day is 2 weeks from today. You've made some moves this week with Omari going out on loan and working on Andre Franco from Porto. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on those moves and where you stand at this point in the window.
It's true, we moved Omari, and everything else is TBD. We'll continue to look at the players available and try to bring in players that could help this group. We know as we get towards the end of the season, it's important that they hit the ground running. So I think it's now about both short and long term. If there's an opportunity to bring someone in that we think can help us in the short term, but also for the next couple of years, we'll do that as well.
Obviously, you're not going to get every player you go for with De Bruyne and a guy like that. It's difficult, Patrick Berg, stuff like that. But has it been challenging when maybe you haven't landed all your top targets at this point?
I don't think so. Everything happens for a reason. I think in some cases it's it's a lifestyle choice or a choice to stay in the European League. And in other cases, we weren't willing to pay the asking price because we see a certain value in players, and we're not going to act in a desperate way. We're going to get players that we think can help us and that makes sense. So, we're still in a good position.
Tim Hotzeman in Red 97. Staying with transfers just for a minute. The team has a choice to either stick with the two DP for U22 roster construction path and get some GAM, or go to 3-3. How do you weigh that choice in terms of the short and long term trade off, just given the team's cap situation and needs?
Yeah, it's a good question because there are some nuances to it. If we choose to not add a DP in this year, we do get a GAM, which we could apply to a transfer fee, and potentially land someone for the long term that would help the club more. With only 10 games left of the season. Whereas a DP, if you add them now, by the time you get, papers and immigration clearance, if it's a foreigner, you're talking about maybe 8 or 7 games left in the season. So those are all things we're discussing. But again, for us, it's really about how we help this team both in short and long term.
Thank you. We'll take a couple of questions from Zoom. We'll start with Jim Alexander, and then we'll go to Alex Campbell. Jim?
Hey, Coach. I wanted to hear your thoughts on your opponents for this weekend. They made a monumental signing in getting Son on board. How do you feel that reflects for the league and an organization? As a technical director, how do you sort of see a signing like that impacting not only the team, but also the league in that instance?
I think it's an interesting move. Son is obviously a player of great pedigree. He's been at the highest level for a number of years. Probably one of the most famous players from Asia in the history of the game. So it's a massive impact signing, and LA has done a great job of building their roster over the last years and have built a competitive team year over year. So, I think it's a great signing for the league.
Alex?
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Greg, as always, for the time. Sergio mentioned the focus right now on the run and chasing a playoff spot. Looking at the Eastern Conference table right
I'm not in the prediction business. I know that we're focused on this week, right, and this week only. And I think, as long as we do our job, hopefully we'll be there at the end, and that's all we can control. I don't think it makes much sense to start looking at, matchups and who's around us. And, it's really right now it's about focusing on us and trying to win the game on Saturday. And that's the most important thing right now. I like, tight races. I think it'll be fun, exciting for the fans, as you come down to it. But really for us, it's about how do we perform and how do we, get the team ready to play each game.
Greg, I'm curious with Steve Cherundolo's run at LAFC winding down, any thoughts you had on him and his impact on that franchise, especially as they've grown, a wild amount since they've launched?
I think he's done a great job. Delivered a championship to the team, to the club. Has a calm presence on the sideline. I think has always been, measured and very clear with what he wants his teams to do and how they play. I think very effective playing style. And, I think he'll be, I know he'll be remembered finally for what he did for the club. And, it's not always easy when you go into a team where the expectations are to win, but for him to deliver that to the city and to the club, shows that he's a great coach.
Earlier in the year, you talked a little bit about, the team struggles against some top-tier opponents. LAFC, I think, is very much in that category of, gotten a ton of points over the past few seasons, made the Club World Cup earlier this year, deep runs in a bunch of tournaments. Is there any extra sort of like emphasis on looking at this game as a measuring stick with where the team has progressed over the past, few weeks and few months? Or is it just that we have to look at every opponent the way that they come to us and take a look at, and just try to treat every game as an equally important match?
Well, I mean, every game is important, but for us, we know we've made progress. That's the important thing. And the result of this game on the weekend won't validate that either way. We know we've grown as a group, grown as a team, and we want to keep improving. And all this is another opportunity to keep improving. Good opponent. They have some big threats in their team. Difficult to break down. Very dangerous in the counterattack. Have produced goals from high press. So a number of things that make them challenging, and it's a fun challenge for our group, and we'll be ready for it.
Chicago Fire 2 have been lights out recently, 15 goals in 2 games, and we saw Tripp Fleming training with the first team today. Any thoughts on what they've done the last couple of weeks, and Tripp specifically as well?
No, it's been great. It's been great to watch. A lot of goals, wins, and climbing in the table. But I think most importantly for the players to understand that there's an opportunity for them. Justin Reynolds trained with us this week. Claudio Cassano trained with us again this week. And, for them to perform really well, they'll get rewarded with opportunities in the first team.
And obviously they're on the way to New York City as we speak. Given that Tripp was with the first team in training, is there a chance he'd be with you this weekend?
Yes.
Thank you.